One of your ministry's roles is around stewardship of the system, and the big focus in this government, as you know, is around outcomes. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate for us what does success look like in terms of stewardship of the regulatory system? Because I know you're a small ministry, mighty, as you've said, but what does success look like, let's just say, from 18 months from now, and then maybe for the end of the forecast period, 5 years from now?
Yeah, no, good question. So if you look at over the next 18 months, our primary objective at the moment is passing the regulatory standards bill, having those principles in place, and that legislation, I think, will really assist with the quality of regulatory impact assessment, something that even the opposition are asking for. We'll also continue to carry out sector reviews. So you may have seen we've recently announced one in the telecommunications sector, which has been crying out for some intervention, or at least less intervention, for a while now. And you'll also see us beef up our, capability work, where we help mentor and educate government workers on how to be better regulators. If you look at over the next 5 years, we'll see more and more of New Zealand's legislation and regulation aligned with the principles of good regulation. Knowing what problem we're trying to solve, what are the costs and benefits of the rule, do the benefits exceed the costs, and who do they fall on? How are people's liberties and property rights impinged, and are we upholding the rule of law? Having these basic questions gives people confidence to invest. It means better jobs. It means better pay. It ultimately means a more prosperous society. Those are the objectives that we should all share. And yet, from what I see today, it seems that only some of us do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple more questions, if I can. So I don't know if you have any examples of success stories of where your ministry is helped provide advice or to actually improve regulation from another ministry. I don't know if you can talk to anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of. We've talked about some of the big ones, but increasingly we see just really small things where people say, "Where do I go in government to report this problem?" So, for example, the anti-money laundering regime was being applied to gift cards. So, in theory, you had to trace somebody giving a gift card. This was really absurd. Gift cards are not a centre for organised crime. We have intervened and had that restriction removed. The people involved estimate that will probably cost them save them about $7 million. So it's not huge, but it pays for half a year of the ministry. Similarly, we've had concerns raised by a company that was being forced to test for flour dust in its bakeries. It turned out that there was no equipment sensitive enough to detect such flour dust at the specified level. So we've intervened and had that changed. There was a company that was offering buy now, pay later. There were restrictions proposed on the way that they could recover their fees that would actually make their business model unviable, because the regulations were really set up for credit cards. So we intervened, and that was changed as an option, and that's made that option of buy now, pay later, which a lot of New Zealanders value, more viable to stay in New Zealand. So those are, I think, three little examples. And through our red tape tip line, we've, I think, had about 600 people come through now. So we're constantly looking for these smaller areas as well as some of the larger ones, such as I think I mentioned the hairdressing, the early childhood, the telecoms, the ag hort, and so on.
Thank you.
Just a couple there. I've got a couple of subs lined up. You're happy for Duncan to take that one?
Look, you've said on a number of occasions, I want to give you an opportunity to correct that there were flour dust regulations. Now, I've seen the documentation. There were never flour dust regulations in force that required the 10 part per million test. The consultation from MB was whether the flour dust test should be changed from 1 part per million to 10 parts per million. So, and time and again, you've suggested that you may change the rule to make it go back. Do you want to correct that, or are you going to keep saying something which is not accurate?
Well, I think you could argue it's something that's not precise. However,
well, I would call it making shit up, actually.
Okay, hang on.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chair. Can we just hear what this Labor minister has just said?
Well, I said you seemed to make up that you had changed the rule.
Why don't you say
when
exactly
clearly
what you said?
the ministry did have input at an early stage, and it said it would be untenable to change the standard. And MB listened to that advice.
I think the member should say again what he just said.
I think, look,
not here to answer your questions.
I'm going to give Dr. Duncan Webb the opportunity to withdraw and apologise for his swearing.
The standard we walk by is the standard we accept in this parliament. We've already
I
established.
apologise for swearing.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Yes. So as I said, you could argue that it was imprecise, but the facts are that there was a regulation that would have had a huge cost if it was put in place. It wasn't, thanks to the Ministry for Regulation. QED, the Ministry for Regulation, has saved people in this country money quite a lot, and I think that's important.
Okay, we're going to go to Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the examples of success that you've cited to the questioning by the member, Dan Bidwar, it's been to do with reducing the sort of regulation that's been available on people. You've characterized it as, burdensome restriction to liberties and freedoms of New Zealanders. Why then did the Ministry for Regulation not submit against the benefit changes that this government is doing? For example, it's restricting the liberties of people on benefits. It's requiring them to have payment cards. I saw in the regulatory impact statement that the Ministry for Regulation didn't submit on those things. So is it just a matter of a selective application of freedom on those that already have quite enough in society and not applying it towards our most vulnerable?
Look, thank you. That's actually an excellent question, and I think elucidates some of the misunderstanding in politics in New Zealand. You see, the thing is, a benefit is not actually a right. It's somebody else's money that is taxed off them and given to another person with a set of conditions. And the taxpayers who have the money taken off them, they do actually have the right to put conditions and mutual obligation around the receipt of that money. That is quite different from a person who owns some property, for example, perhaps their land or their section, having restrictions placed on that, for example, can they build a house on it? So there's a very big difference between the process I described at the beginning of this session, taking money off people and then applying it to public purposes, in this case benefits. That is taxing and spending, and that is overlooked by the Treasury. On the other hand, there is the process of placing restrictions on the use and exchange of property, and the difference is that a benefit is not your property, it's someone else's money that was taxed and given to you.
So you're essentially suggesting that there's two classes of New Zealanders. The people who have property should be able to have more rights than the people without property. That's essentially the implication.
Well, I'm not aware of any New Zealanders that don't have property. Remember, property includes your money, it includes your possessions, it includes real property such as land and buildings, it includes your car if you have one. I know some of you Greens don't like that, but actually every New Zealander owns property to some level, and the ownership of property is the surest pathway out of poverty towards prosperity. That is why it is so critical that we have a framework that upholds people's right to use and exchange private property.
If you don't know anyone without any property, Mr. Seymour, I suggest you get out of your Epsom bubble. But let me just follow up with...
Didn't you stand against me in Epsom?
No,
Oh,
that's
sorry.
Lawrence Dunant.
Wow.
Let's get.
I'm often confused with my better looking.
Okay, one more stop, and then we're going to go to Dr. Woods.
I'm sorry. I thought you had.
I'm so flabbergasted by that exchange that I forgot my supplement.
Well, you're both so studious and articulate. It's an easy mistake to make.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Megan Woods.
All right, everybody, fill me in on what I just missed.
Francisco Hernandez sat down there and compared the restrictions that have been placed, the lack of restrictions for property owners, and brought a beneficiary example in there. And David Seymour used the term, well, it's someone else's money, so they have the rights to sit there and do that. But then, if you use the same logic, that would also apply to superannuation, because Rob Muldoon, when he was the Minister of Finance, concurrently holding the position of Prime Minister, he got rid of our superannuation scheme. They would have sat down there and changed it. So technically, if you're a pensioner, you, according to David Seymour, a beneficiary scum.
Yeah, here's the problem with everything
I'm
Seymour just
always
said.
according to national. Don't worry.
No. But here's the problem, right? The Human Rights Commission has stated very clearly, and this is part of our international agreements, is that everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for their health and well-being. So technically, yes, Kiwis do have a right to receive a benefit in social safety nets. Now, that social safety net doesn't have to be in the form of supported living payments. It could be in the form of anything that meets those requirements. But he is incorrect to say that Kiwis do not have a right to a social safety net because it's someone else's money. That is wrong. That is incorrect, even by international standards.
Sorry. Yeah, and for clarity, yes, I know that Seymour is ACT, but same government.
And also, what is he going on about? What is he going on about? Getting all up and tight, being all fucking, sensitive about Duncan saying a swear word when Brooke Van Velden just stood up the other day and said cunt.
Yeah.
Oh, that was weeks ago. That's old news. Nobody cares anymore, remember?
Well, he's either getting gushy-patsy questions from his own side or questions that he won't answer because they're too close to the bone from the opposition.
Mm-hmm. Why can't we have Professor Snape's truth potion he has to sit there and take before the select committee?
Yeah, Yeah, okay. So I'm here right now at the Human Rights Commission, okay? I'm going to quote what they said. And I've got the link in the chat so people can look it up for themselves. But everyone as a member of society has the right to social security. So that's the benefit, that's welfare. Everyone has the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, so that's superannuation, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his or her control. So Articles 22 and 25, Section 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights endorses this, so advocates for this. You have to provide a social safety net. What the fuck is he actually talking about? I don't think he even knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Does Seymour even know what he's talking about?
No.
All right, so shall we move along then?
Yeah, let's move along.
I should switch the screen first. That might help.